Hey there, creatives. Thanks so much for your continued listenership. I'm so glad that you keep listening. And I'm really excited to share this next episode, episode 136 of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. And today you're going to be listening to an interview that I had with Stephanie Anderson Ladd, and she is a seasoned psychotherapist, artist, teacher, and soul collage facilitator. And I don't know if you don't know about soul collage, you're seriously missing out. It's a really incredible artistic, spiritual tool. And we're talking about her book, Goddesses of Self Care, 30 Divine Feminine Archetypes to Guide You. And she shares kind of the influence of collage in her book, and her book is beautiful. It has such great imagery in it, and it's just rich, full of um, content to engage you in your own self care practices. But of course, she also offers workshops. So you'll have to check that out. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Stephanie Anderson Ladd.
The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative, focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I am very excited to welcome my next guest to the show. Her name is Stephanie Anderson Ladd, and she is a psychotherapist, artist, teacher, soul collage facilitator, and author of a new book, Goddesses of Self Care, 30 Divine Feminine Archetypes to Guide You. She lives in Durham, North Carolina, where she facilitates soul collage workshops in person and online creative courses on goddess archetypes, the tarot, myths, and fairy tales. She's been a licensed psychotherapist for almost 30 years and has led many workshops on creative self discovery over the years as part of and in addition to her private practice. Thank you so much for being here today, Stephanie.
Thank you, Raina. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Yes. So let's start a little bit talking about uh, the the work of the goddess archetype and how that entered into the work that you do as a psychotherapist.
Yeah, I have been interested in goddess archetypes and archetypal psychology for many years. Actually, so I became a therapist about 30 years ago, and I worked with a Jungian therapist around that time when I decided I'm going to do this too. And she really, opened up this whole new world for me, having to do with myths and fairy tales. And in particular for me were these goddess archetypes. And at the time, it was about the time that Jean Shinoda Boland's book, Goddesses in Every Woman, came out. And that talked about the Greek goddesses and how their psychological makeup could translate to modern women. So fast forward, over the years, I just started working with these various goddess archetypes and researching them and discovering, who are the Hindu goddesses and who are the goddesses of Africa, the Yoruba tradition, or, the Eastern goddesses. And of course, there's a
Mhm.
lot of Western goddesses. And it was just fascinating to me. And they all have these unique qualities.
Mhm.
And, just in terms of working with women, I think my clients are primarily women, not all, but it is a way to really understand ourselves better by,
Mm.
really delving into what these goddesses represent and symbolize, and how we can kind of bring some of these qualities out in ourselves. Sometimes we
Mhm.
just align with them, we just resonate with them.
Mhm. And
So
so,
go ahead.
what might be some of the qualities that you connect the goddesses with individuals? So, I know in your book, you kind of have it broken up into kind of different characteristics or qualities that, and there's several goddesses for each kind of grouping. Can you share a little bit about those?
Yes. So my book is divided into 12 chapters, and the chapters to me kind of represent these realms where people who come to psychotherapy often want to explore, or it's what they're dealing with. Like, for
Mhm.
example, depression and grief.
Mhm.
That's one chapter. Or anxiety and fear is another chapter. But I also have chapters on things like creativity and play,
Yeah.
because so many people are lacking that in their lives, or looking for ways to, be more creative and playful.
Mhm.
They may have, done that as children, but put that away as adults, and need to find that again and reclaim it. So, yeah, the chapter topics really, I'm hoping that the reader would kind of dip into this book and be able to go, I'm really feeling anxious, so let me delve into that chapter and
Mm.
meet these goddesses. So in each chapter I introduced, say 2 to 4 goddesses,
Mhm.
depending on, what I want to explore there, and how I feel like they kind of help us within that particular realm.
Mhm. Mhm. And I know that part of part of how you help people connect with their inner goddess is through engaging them in a variety of creative interventions. And would you speak a little bit about those and how those really help people identify and connect to the goddess within? Um,
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, first of all, one of my beliefs is that when working with goddess archetypes, we really want to see them. And, in my book, I have lots of colored pictures and images. It was important to me that there be images to go with these
mhm,
goddesses. You have to see them, and then they become a part of your imagination, right? Then you
mm,
can kind of work with them and picture them in your mind.
mm,
So that's important. And then it's also important to, I encourage everyone, and in each chapter, I have different creative exercises and ways to bring these goddesses to life, so to speak, by, it could be whatever turns you on, whether it's painting or collaging, which is my particular uh, area of expertise, we could say, what I love to do. And journaling and art
mhm,
journaling, for example. It could be sculpting.
mhm,
One of the creative exercises I suggest is making a spirit doll, which,
mm,
I don't know if you've ever made one, but you can just make them from um, things in nature, like sticks and twigs and shells and feathers, and anything that you find, and you can either glue them together and create a 3-dimensional figure, or you can lay them on, a flat surface. Maybe you're
mhm,
at the beach and you just create this figurine, with
mhm.
these elements. So doing anything like that, where you're kind of like, I just made a goddess, and it reflects something of you. It can't help but do that, right? Whatever
Mhm,
you choose, however you imagine and put these pieces together, in some ways is a reflection of the goddess within.
mm, mhm, mhm. And I know, you were saying collage is like your personal, that's your favorite.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about how you connected with collage and how you kind of found um, that to be your artistic expression. Um, can you share
Mhm.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, will say I did like collaging when I was a child and a little girl, and I remember making these books and little stories, and I would find pictures and cut them out and, create an image to illustrate my story. So it's something I guess you could say
Mm.
intuitively was drawn to and liked playing with. So, then fast forward another 20 years or so, and another piece of the story is that my mother was an artist, and
Mm.
she was interested in all kinds of different art forms, from dancing to painting. And I felt a bit I felt emotionally abandoned by her because of her interest in art, and sometimes I
Mm.
felt like I took back seat. And I do talk about the mother wound in my book, which this would be an example of a mother wound.
Mhm.
It wasn't something intentional that she did, but some women weren't cut out to be mothers, or she had a artistic expression that I think was frustrating to her.
Mm.
And so I decided as a child, well, if I'm going to have children, I can't be an artist, because, right, in my childlike thinking, it was either or.
Mhm.
If I pursued artistic things and put my time and energy into that, then I would then, neglect my child. And of
Mhm.
course, it wasn't until I became a mother and my daughter was probably about 7 years old that I started to recognize that that was not correct, that I could find a way to do both. And, it didn't have to be this all or nothing, either or situation. So I started, playing with different art forms. And at the same time, I had uh, been recovering from thyroid cancer. And I felt the need at the time to really find some way to express some of what I was feeling and
Mhm.
understand the emotional component of this, disease that I was dealing with.
Yeah.
And um, I discovered Soul Collage quite accidentally. It was just about the time that it sort of came out, and there was a website. And so this was about 2003 or 2002, 2003. And I got really excited when I saw what it was about. Oh, and before that, I had created this mandala of the Great
Mm.
Mother. And so, as part of my healing from thyroid cancer, I just started choosing all these images of mother and child, Madonna and child, or the Great Mother, some of the mother goddesses. And I made this beautiful mandala with these cutout
Mm.
images. And that's one of the suggestions in my book and the chapter on learning to mother yourself.
Mm.
So just making that mandala, that collage, which was big, was so healing to me, because I was reimagining, right, what it felt like to be with a mother who was, holding me and seeing me, and
Mhm.
it was a way to heal the mother wound. And
Yeah.
so then it was just like, okay, collage, I got to do more. And then I found out about Soul Collage and just started doing it immediately. And I started sharing it with all my friends. And then I started doing workshops, and it just like started coming out of me. And then I would start talking to my clients about
Mm.
Soul Collage, and do you want to try it? And
Mhm.
so it kind of, came out a little bit organically, we could say.
Beautiful. I know a lot of art therapists that are, they're trained in soul collage, and they bring it in with the clients that they serve, and there's just so many possibilities for healing
Yes.
and exploration.
Yes.
With the cards. And then you can probably speak more about it because I'm not an expert in soul collage. I've taken a couple of like short workshops over the years, and have made a couple of cards myself. But what I really liked about it was the fact that you build out an entire collection of cards, and then you can use them almost like an oracle deck,
Yes.
and like continue and further explore and journal in response to the cards that you pick, beyond just I've created something once and then I'm putting it away and it's beautiful to look at, but I'm not really utilizing it anymore. Um,
That's right. It's been something I've been doing for, some 20 years, and I have a deck of 400 cards now, but it just keeps giving, and like you said, once you've created them, and I don't know if you ever really stop, but I what I like to do as a daily practice is just draw a card every day. And,
mm,
I'll either remember what it meant when I made it, and sometimes I don't, and I just look at it and decide, well, what does it mean to me today? Like, what is it saying to me? These
mm,
images that I've created, and they're almost always images, not words, because you're really wanting to utilize the right brain. Once you start
mhm.
introducing words, then you're also engaging the left brain, and thinking and analyzing as opposed to just feeling it and being taken into the imagery and letting it speak to you, and I think it speaks to you on a soul level. I think that
Mhm.
that's one thing I really like about, well, of course it's called Soul Collage, and it really is a way to access your soul. And
Mhm.
I talk about that in Goddesses of Self-Care, like, what does self-care really mean? And to me, it's soul
Mm.
care. It goes
Mm.
beyond the superficial meaning of doing something like getting your nails done or getting a massage. It's really about, what am I needing today? And how can I see myself more clearly, or, access
Mm.
what I'm feeling?
Yeah, I think that is really important for us to kind of elaborate on, because self-care is such a kind of a popularized term right now that it almost, I don't know, minimizes what that actually is and means. And in my mind, I really equate it with the proactive measures that we take every day that become part of our rituals and practices, that help us to feel our best day to day. And
Yeah,
of course, we can go more than that, but um,
yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's being proactive and doing something for ourselves. We women
mhm.
are so conditioned to do for others and, just be the caretakers of the world, and then we forget about ourselves. And I don't know how many female clients I've had who've said that, like, I don't have time. I don't have time to be
Yes,
creative. I don't have time to take care of myself because I got kids, or I've got a job, or I've got this and everything. I'm just, running themselves ragged. And to me, it's really a matter of being proactive and saying, I matter. I am going to put myself first, because I do
mhm.
think, we're actually better mothers and parents and, even therapists when we feel our own well, right?
Absolutely. So necessary.
Yes.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by my practice, Florida Art Therapy Services. And we provide art therapy services, mental health services, and high quality supervision for licensed folks in Florida, as well as for art therapy credentials. And we also provide uh, experiential based continuing education programming, and we provide that for licensed folks in the state of Florida, but also our continuing ed can be used to satisfy the requirements for the Art Therapy Credentials Board continuing education requirements. And we have a couple of courses that really focus on developing supervisory practice. One is a 12-hour Florida qualified supervisor training. It's a 2-day training. And we have a couple of options coming up this fall for folks. We're going to have an in-person, in-office training, which will be limited to 15 people on September 24th and 25th, 2022. And it's going to be awesome. We're going to be engaging in lots of really great experiential activities. I teach this class with Amy Strom, who's a licensed clinical social worker. And part of what we do is have you engage in creating a sand tray about your supervisory identity, and as our kind of culminating event at the end of day 2, which is always really fun. We haven't done it in person since pandemic hit, so we're really excited about that. We also have another Zoom training, also 2 days, and that's going to be October 15th and 16th, 2022. And we'll still engage in experiential activities, and we make plenty use of the breakout rooms and interactive group discussion and things. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, if you're a licensed therapist in the state of Florida, please go ahead and head over to our website, floridaarttherapyservices.com, and you can find that under the continuing education tab under 12-hour Florida qualified supervisor. And I haven't added the next date yet, but we will have a date coming up for a 6-hour supervision and art therapy training, which I hosted earlier this year, which was really wonderful. We go over theory, structure, applications, practical aspects, plus didactic and experiential based activities to really synthesize the learning that we're engaged in. And so we'll be adding another opportunity for that this fall. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can find that under the continuing education tab as well. And we have a couple of other trainings too coming up. So check that out and enjoy the rest of the podcast. Mm-hmm. So how do you help people when they have like they're feeling that pressure of scarcity of time in their lives, and that they don't know how to quite figure out where to fit the time in to do this kind of soul work, if you will?
Well, this is something I had to learn too. And it was about the same time that I was talking about when my daughter was about 7, and I started saying, I could be an artist and a mother. And I realized that I actually had to set aside time and literally put it on my calendar because, I kept an agenda and a schedule for my clients
Mhm.
and certain other things, right, appointments and things. And I like, what if I made an appointment with myself? And I also engaged my husband, my daughter's father, to be like, you take over during these times so I can have this time for
Mm,
me to be creative. And he was willing to do that. And this is another example of ask for what you need and want, right?
mm,
If we don't ask for what we need and want, then we often don't get it, and nobody knows we need it, right? And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
it's asking ourselves too, like, I deserve this? Of course I do. I need this. I
Mhm,
want to play. And so, that's one way is really to just schedule it,
mhm,
give yourself a couple of few hours, whatever, half a day to just, let your creative self run free. And, sometimes it's a process of
mhm.
discovery.
Oh,
And that's
definitely.
okay.
Yeah, definitely the process. I think as I, I identify too as an artist, but I think I don't identify as an artist the way some like a traditional artist who does that for a living does,
Right.
where I'm really thinking about what is coming forth, and I'm not really planning what I'm going to create. It comes from wherever it comes from and
Mhm.
speaks to me and evolves. And yeah, it's it's more about the process than it is about the product. And of course, that's the art therapy background, where we want to be able to utilize art as a way of knowing ourself and understanding ourself and what our needs are.
Mhm.
Um, so important.
Yeah, and it's good to be able to kind of surprise yourself and, not know what's coming. The other piece is getting away from judgment and
Mm,
criticism. I think that stops a lot of people,
yeah.
right? Because then they're like, well, I'm not a good artist. Or maybe somebody told them back in grade school something like that. And
Mhm,
that's often mostly not true, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. All that matters is what we get out of it. It's a way of expressing ourselves, our soul.
mhm,
And, it could take so many forms and you could stumble upon, like, I feel like I stumbled upon Soul Collage, and yet
mhm,
it felt like it was meant to be. It's just what
mhm.
I needed.
So, for folks that are listening who may not be acquainted with Soul Collage, can you kind of describe it a little bit further of like, how do you walk someone through this process the first time that you're engaging them with Soul Collage? Because it is quite different than maybe like a vision board collage, which a lot of people are very
Mhm.
familiar with, and they might see like a collage and think of that. Can
Yeah.
you describe maybe a little bit the difference of how what makes soul collage in the artistry of it?
Well, it was created by a woman named Sina Frost, who's no longer with us, but she was a psychotherapist in California, and she came up with this idea of creating these deck of cards that represent the soul. You are each of us on our individual journey, and there are four suits to a deck, and the that's fun to once you start making a few cards to start to think about. So there's a suit that called the council suit, which represents the archetypes. So, all I have a whole subset of goddess archetypes, you know, and it could be any number of archetypes, right? That we can
Mhm,
think of, like the magician or the witch, or even love and death. Those are archetypal experiences. So what does that look like if you were to imagine it with images? So if you came to a Soul Collage workshop, first of all, you're going to see usually an array of images cut out from magazines or, torn out. I like to remove words when I do my classes so that they're not even, um,
mm.
distracted by words. And in the beginning, I used to have magazines out, but that too was a distraction because people would sit and read an article, or they would
Oh yeah.
right? They really caught up in what else was in the magazine. So just putting the images out there, again, it just puts you into a whole other mindset, where
Mhm,
your logical mind is not a part of it. And so one of the things I do at the beginning is just have all these images out and have everybody choose one image that speaks to them. And we could even say that the image may choose you rather than you choose the image. And
definitely.
right? And then we sit in the circle, and there's a piece that goes with and once you've made a card where you there's a writing piece, or you could speak it, where you say, I am one who,
Mhm,
and you speak what that card says about you, or what does that card say? I am one who, loves to be in nature and needs to be around trees, something. And so I have each person with just one single image say that I am one who.
mhm.
And so they're just saying it extemporaneously. And it's always so interesting because I always think about this, like, if if we put a group of people in a room and just had them say something about yourself, right? we're going to say something like, I'm a therapist and I'm a mother, and we're just going to start
Yes.
talking about ourselves.
Labeling
Yes,
ourselves.
yes. And the
Yeah.
roles we have in life. But then when you have an image in your hand and you're speaking from that, you're revealing a whole nother dimension of yourself.
Mhm.
So it goes deep usually, and it can be quite poetic at times. Um, so that's the starting point. And then initially it's an intuitive process. So just go around and choose images that, again, just that you're drawn to, and cut them out in such a way, again, no right or wrong,
Mhm.
um, that the cards are 5 by 8 inches. That's sort of the standard size.
Mhm.
And usually they're on like mat board, but it could just be some cardstock that you cut out. That's how I started doing it. Um, and so, you create an image and you don't know what it is until you finished it and you look at it, and then maybe you do the I am one who,
Mhm.
and then it speaks to you, and it tells you who it is or what it is. And, come on, it's coming from your soul.
Yeah.
And it's usually surprising on some level.
I think so, definitely. When I've done it, it was surprising for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
You're like,
Yeah.
where did that come from? And usually it could be some part of you that's sort of been waiting to get out, waiting to be heard.
Mhm. Definitely. And I'm it makes me think about earlier when you were talking about, we need to use our voice in order to communicate what we need
Mhm.
from those around us. Otherwise, they're not mind readers. They don't know. Is there a particular goddess or goddesses that really connect with helping people to find and use their voice?
That's a good question. I kind of think it depends on the individual and where,
Okay.
how and where they might need to learn to use their voice.
Mhm.
But like, for example, I would say, just thinking about, for example, Aphrodite, who's the mighty Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty in the Greek tradition, and that's also Venus in the Roman
Mhm.
pantheon. She was really powerful, and she definitely got what she wanted. She didn't suffer fools, and she didn't let the gods, we could say, boss her around or take advantage of her. She spoke up and she went after what she needed and wanted. So that might be an example.
Mhm.
She was quite the lover, but that's another aspect of her. Um, and then there's Artemis, who's also a Greek goddess of the hunt and the moon. And she's usually depicted with a bow and arrow, and she's got the bow pulled back and she's pointing at the target, whatever it might be. And so in some respects, I feel like she kind of is the type or part of us, the archetype or part of us that really kind of says, this is what I want. I'm going after it.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's
Aiming
within
for
my
it.
sights, and
Mhm.
it's determination.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, how have you turned your like this aspect of your work? Because it sounds like I'm kind of breaking up my thought here, but part of what you do is very psychotherapy oriented, but it also sounds like you're doing a lot of creative work that taps into very healing experiences, but is not therapy, not clinical. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, I think it is. I was kind of saying it's a little bit outside the box, but it's interesting to kind of have the clinical academic background and basis foundation as a therapist, and in my book there's a lot of practical psychological psychotherapeutic techniques and suggestions,
Hmm.
but it's combined with this spiritual creative, um, piece that, well, it's kind of in the transpersonal realm. I was trained
Mm-hmm.
as a transpersonal psychologist, so it has that little spiritual aspect. Not everybody resonates with that. I will say, some of my clients, I might try it or see if they're open to it, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them have surprised me and been open to it. But those that are open to it, and I'm pretty intuitive about that and kind of knowing who might be. And I do usually ask my clients, especially women, what is your creative outlet?
Mm.
And sometimes I'm met with, what? Like, what do you mean? And again, this kind of gets back to, I don't have time. I'm not an artist. I can't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, disagree. I think we are artists. We have that potential within us. And if
Mm-hmm.
we want to, exercise that muscle and or discover that part of us. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to Soul Collage, one of the suits, I guess I was starting on that, that is the, besides the archetypes, is a suit called the committee. And this
Mm.
really ties in well with psychotherapeutic work. This is like the inner parts, right? The mini selves, the subpersonalities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is usually a good starting point with clients, is to, inevitably someone might start talking about this part of themselves that's so critical, right? Everybody has an inner
Mm-hmm.
critic or an inner perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
or what, an inner victim, an inner worrier, right? We could just name all kinds of parts, right?
An inner imposter.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And really it's kind of fun to do that mind mapping thing too, just see like what comes up for each of us, right? We all have our little committee of parts, and some of them can be helpful, like it could be the inner teacher or the inner artist, but it could be these parts that aren't very helpful, like the inner
Mm-hmm.
critic. So sometimes I'll start with that, and it's like, what does your inner critic look like? What's its name? So then you could start making a card for that, like, well, let me
Mm-hmm.
see, what does it look like? And that's really interesting to do. And then they can use this card, this image that they've created, and dialogue with it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get into some kind of just assault kind of work, or um, the dialogue work of, how does the core self of the client talk to this part and see it separate from themselves? Not,
Mm-hmm.
so many times I think we get these become conflated with who we are, and they're not.
Right.
Right. And they can also
Yeah.
get so much power, and by doing this work, we're able to kind of put them in their place, we could say.
Yes, definitely. Mhm.
So, working with these images in that way is just, I think, just a wonderful therapeutic tool. And most of my clients, when they start creating these cards and seeing these different parts of themselves, it's very healing, because they're starting to own themselves, see their core selves as separate
Mhm.
from all these little pesky parts sometimes that can get the better of us.
Oh yeah. It's a journey for each one of us for sure.
Yes.
Um, that's a essential part, I think, of how I work too, using creativity and really diving into that, helping them to identify and create those pieces outside of themselves.
Hmm.
If we can take it out, then it gives us that space, that
Yes.
um, psychic space from it, and we are better able to say, oh, wait a minute, like that's not really who I am.
Yeah.
That which can be really hard to do sometimes.
Hmm.
So, how have you utilized this work as adjunctive to the work of psychotherapy? And like maybe speak a little bit about how the book itself might be an adjunct to the work that you do with clients, and how that has helped you in your practice.
Yeah. So again, when I started with Soul Collage, I just, like I said, just jumped into, I want to share this with other people and I want to do this with other people. And then I just started, offering these workshops or play shops, that's actually what I call them.
I love
Yeah,
that.
right. It takes the work out of it. Um, and so a lot of my clients would come to the play shops, and I've continued to do that over the years. And then I started offering some online courses about 10, 12 years ago, I guess. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and just experimenting and playing with that and what would that be like. And so I would create Facebook groups, and then I would create the content. Um, and I've done goddess archetypes, and I did a 3-year series on the tarot archetypes, particularly the major arcana from the Fool to the World, which is a whole journey, life journey right there. And so people would actually use Soul Collage to create these images, these archetypal images.
That
And
sounds really
all,
fun.
yeah, it was fun. And I feel like I need to go back to that at some point. But this year I'm going to offer a course about the goddesses of self-care. So I'm going to, base it on my book and offer it online this fall and going into next year. So that, basically it's going to have a creative piece in each section so that people are actually doing creative, things, imagining these goddess archetypes. And then what are the self-care practices that these goddesses teach, we could say.
Mm.
So, it usually attracts a number of my clients when I let them know I'm offering these workshops. And of course, there's anonymity and confidentiality. I never, of course, would let on that they're clients, and it works. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for many years, and sometimes I do it live and would just do Soul Collage play shops so people can learn the art of Soul Collage. And other times I did 2 years on fairy tales. And
Wow, that sounds
that's
really
fun.
interesting
Yeah.
too.
Fairy tales and myths to me are, sort of in the same realm as the goddesses, because, stories can be very healing as well.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
see ourselves in the stories, right? We project ourselves, or we resonate with certain characters, and then it also stirs up things from childhood,
Oh, yes,
you know. So
definitely.
very healing work. I love doing that kind of therapeutic work. And of course, I'm not acting as a therapist when I do these
Hmm.
play shops and online courses. But some of it comes in handy, right? Some of that knowledge of being a therapist certainly can help when I'm facilitating or guiding, but for the most part, people that take them are just, getting the permission from themselves to play and to
Mm.
create that they may have never given themselves.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is so true. Um, it's I do like a large adult art therapy group twice a month, and it's for individuals in like sober living, intensive outpatient type program. And one of the things that always comes up is this aspect of that loss, part of the loss of um, having an addiction is you lose that ability to be playful, you lose that ability to be creative, you don't allow yourself to engage in those things. And it is such a beautiful unfolding to watch somebody who at first was like, I don't, you want me to do, I can't do this. And they're real squirrely about
Hmm.
playing in the creativity aspect of things. They just want that traditional, like, let's just sit and I'll listen to you
Yeah.
read a worksheet kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then they get into it, and it's just magic, that happens, and the shift of like, oh wow, I'm finding this lost part of myself that I forgot that lived in me, that really needs this, they start to tell me when I come, like, oh, I got these supplies and this supplies, and I'm making this. It really is important that that creative and playful part, in our caring for the self in our adult life, that it's not the work of children.
Absolutely. And something shifts, like you said, all of a sudden they're like, oh, something's lit up in me that was not there
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
fun to see where they go with that, and I've
It.
seen some people just really take off and really,
Mhm.
make art a big part of their life.
Mhm. Yeah, and to reclaim it, to
Yes.
reclaim that role of being an artist, being a creator and being creative. I think it's a beautiful gift that we can share with people,
Hmm.
help them reconnect there. So, has it ever happened where you offer the courses and then people take the course and then they transition into, um, going further in like wanting more depth work in like a psychotherapeutic way?
Yes, absolutely. I think it just opens all these doors, and like I said, usually it's like they might be unconscious of it at first, and then then by creating something and there it is in front of you, and oh, it has a message, and oh, yes, that's part of me speaking, isn't it? It just lends itself to, let me explore this further, and can you help me, know
Hmm.
this part of myself better, or explore this. And sometimes it's inner child work,
Mm.
and certainly if someone had trauma, I think one of the possible obstacles, you probably are aware of this, but trauma can kind of um, keep the imagination at bay. It's like it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
safe to go there.
Hmm.
And so sometimes that has to be worked through with people who had some significant trauma, like that it's safe to explore their imagination.
Hmm.
And, even if sometimes the imagery might be kind of dark or scary, or, something that they don't really know what to make of it, that's our job, right? To help them understand it and integrate it, and
Yeah.
work through it so that they can see, another the light at the end of the tunnel, we could say.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it can go like either way, right? For some people, they're like bursting at the seams to like let all this creative energy flow and let out a lot of, suffering and rage and anger in regards to their trauma, and they need to have that creative outlet. And then the others where it's like they're holding it because they
Mhm.
feel like, okay, if I put that out there, then it's going to be real, and then I have to deal with it,
Yes, absolutely.
you know?
And it just may take time to get there.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily everyone who's going to want to explore that through art, but or creativity. But I think when you can, or when they're open to it, or they allow themselves
Hmm.
that, and you're with them, so that they know it's safe, and you're going to help them understand what's coming out of it. um, it can be a really beautiful healing process.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Um, So, if people wanted to learn more about your absolutely beautiful book, it really is beautiful, so like colorful. The artwork in there is absolutely gorgeous. And it's just laid out so beautifully. I haven't had a chance to read all the way through it, but I did have a chance to read a little bit and scan through it, and definitely appreciated all of the art. Where can people find your book?
Well, it is available on Amazon. So, just look up Goddesses of Self-Care, and it's 30 Divine Feminine Archetypes to Guide You. So you'll meet 30 different goddesses in the book. And also my website, which is Stephanie Anderson Ladd, LADD.com.
Okay.
And I have some information there, and I will be posting information about the courses I'm going to offer
Mm,
related to the book, which will be, probably in another couple of months. But
okay.
yeah, it's
Perfect.
available out there, and I hope people enjoy, working with it. I've been getting feedback that, again, it's kind of like a good book to dip in and out of, that it's a wonderful
Mm,
kind of handbook that you might pick up and go, I'm feeling this today, or I'm,
mhm.
what one of the chapters say is on health and healing. Maybe I'm dealing with some health issues. How do I practice self-care around, whatever I'm dealing with, with my body or illness or whatever we might be struggling with? And so then they just dive into that chapter. And so, however it works for people is fine with me.
It definitely had that feel to it, that you didn't have to sit down and read this from start to finish. You could pick it up, open it to whatever section you wanted, and there was just a little bit of information to kind of orient you, a little information about the qualities and characteristics of the goddess,
Mhm.
and then a variety of prompts for different creative activities that you could do around it. So super accessible. And I think whether you're a therapist wanting to do some of your own personal work, or a therapist looking to add more archetypal creative processes to the work that you're doing with clients,
Mhm.
the book would also support that really well too.
Well, thank you. I think so too. Yeah, it's meant to be, something you can do on your own, but certainly it could be a tool, a therapeutic tool as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I think women in particular just really enjoy kind of finding a goddess that they relate to, or, some divine feminine, avatar that they like to, create, and or if they don't create it, they might find a figurine or a picture, and then they kind of bring in that energy. Like Tara, for example, that Tibetan goddess, she's such a to me a healing goddess. So anytime I'm dealing with something where I feel like I need some healing, particularly physically, or I'm in pain or something like that, that she's just the soothing goddess. She was the goddess who heard our cries. And she didn't become she's a bodhisattva, meaning she's always becoming Buddha. She's not like, hasn't gone there yet, because she wants to stay with us and help us. And I love that, that it's like she's accessible. And um anyway, so that, just finding a goddess that just kind of meets your needs in the moment
Mhm.
is a lot of fun and helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a great resource for people. And for listeners, I really do hope that you check out Stephanie's website. And again, that's Stephanie Anderson Ladd, spelled LADD.com. And you can find her book, Goddesses of Self Care, there, or on Amazon. And I'm assuming if you want to learn about the workshops and courses that she offers, you can sign up on her website to get on her newsletter email list, where she can send out more information. And probably by the time this is released, because we're recording, it's June, but we probably won't be releasing until August. Maybe it will coincide really well with when you'll be announcing your course offering. So
Yeah, that's about right. Thank
perfect.
you. I think that I just wanted to say that when you talked about the need for rest and taking a break, that's such an important self-care thing for us to do and be aware of. And so many times we don't, either
Hmm.
as therapists or just, anyone. We I really applaud you for that, for taking that time and modeling it, and
Mm.
I talk about that in my book too, about Hestia and the goddess, like resting and being present. Like sometimes we just have to really make that a priority and just claim it and
Hmm.
just, I'm doing it, and everything's
Yes.
just going to have to stop, and I really think that's wonderful. And we need to do more of that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's hard. Like I knew it was coming, but in like retrospect, I'm like, I probably could have done this a month ago. But I had plotted it out that it would happen in June. And so I was like, I'm going to hold myself to that. But then I was like, what am I? No, it's good. I'm
Yeah,
going to take
I'm
the
checking
time
it.
off. It'll be okay. Everything will work out. And we'll come back in the fall. I think the first year I went all the way through for over a full year of releasing something every week. And I think I was just so excited to do it
Yeah.
that I did it. And then I got to a place where I was like, okay, I definitely need the
Yeah.
break. And other podcasters definitely model like almost like a seasons.
Hmm.
um and I was like, I'm going to take the summer off, and I'm going to take time off at the holidays too. And it kind of breaks it up into two, because we do need that time as practice owners. I mean, most of us therapists are doing like 5 different jobs if we're
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, if we're
Yes.
doing our own thing, right? Like you have your practice, you're doing workshops, you're writing a book, you're doing
Yes.
all of these things at the same time, and each take part of your creative energy, your emotional energy. Um, and we can't do it all without that ability to slow down and rest. And I constantly have to tell myself, slowing down is really the answer in order to accomplish more.
Yes. I agree. So true.
Yeah,
It's a gift we can give ourselves, yeah, because the if we don't, we just burn out, and then where are we, right?
right. Not no good to anybody.
No. Mm-mm.
No good to anybody. Well, I know I am looking forward to spending time this summer exploring your book and engaging in some of the interventions that you have in there. And this has been a really lovely conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me, Raina. I enjoyed the conversation too, and just glad we can support each other on this path.
Me too. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Creative Psychotherapist Podcast. I'm grateful for your continued listenership. And if you like what you hear, please don't forget to rate, like, subscribe, review, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We would love to have that support from you and hear from you. Um, and I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode with Stephanie Anderson Ladd about her creative process and her work with Soul Collage and archetypes, female archetypes, just rich with wonderful content and deep deep transformational meaning in her work. And, don't forget to go check out her website, Stephanie Anderson Ladd, that's LADD.com. And you can sign up to learn more about her and when she's offering workshops, and so you can participate. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.